So it's my great pleasure to be here to present my PhD research, my thesis, which is entitled In Silico Modeling, Analysis and Control of Complex Disease, Addressing Clinical Questions, Personalized Treatment, and Healthcare Management. So let's start. My PhD falls under the area of computational medicine. I performed this project with Professor Fabio D'Ercole, who was my advisor. If you think to the motivation to perform a research project like this, I think they are quite intuitive. The utility, the feasibility, if you think to a disease, it is often associated with complex and dynamical characteristics. And so if you want to describe its state, progress, evolution, and treatment, all these aspects could clearly benefit from the contribution of engineering, mathematics, and control theory. Moreover, there are also economics and ethics motivations, such as experimental and clinical saving, limit or replace animal testing, but also the viability and the share of data nowadays, and the computation and procedure for data analysis, thanks to new software and hardware. Moreover, I have a personal motivation. Indeed, I would like to improve the life of people facing such a terrible situation. And my approach is an engineer modus operandi. Indeed, I design, calibrate, and validate new computational models for this is under investigation, providing new knowledge. Then exploit this model to solve control problem to propose optimal solution. Indeed, the very final goal, which let me say is an ambitious goal, is to provide model-informed support to healthcare. So going a bit more in detail, I have addressed 3 classes of disease. The first one is genetic diseases, cancer, which is the core of my thesis. Indeed, I perform different projects. Cancer is very tremendous as complex disease, so I face it with different approach. The first one in agent-based approach, so I describe each cancer cell individually. Then there is a population-based approach, so at the level of the different subpopulation of the different clone composing the cancer. And this project is done in collaboration with a group from UK and a biologist from Austria. Then there is a gene regulatory network approach, again in collaboration with the group from UK. And finally, a protein-protein interaction network, which is done in collaboration with a group from Poland. And all these projects have behind the same idea, which is very simple, but at the same time very powerful. Indeed, the cancer cannot think, cannot make prediction, cannot make choice. They simply respond, the cancer cells simply respond to the external stimuli they are receiving, and so they evolve according to the selection pressure of the microenvironment. Instead, we are rational, we can think, we can make prediction, and so we should exploit this asymmetry, and we should exploit model-based control methods to design optimal treatment that can understand, predict, and even steer cancer evolution, overcoming drug resistance. But today, for the sake of time, I will only present a project, which is the population-based project, and then I will will move to the other class of disease, which is neurological disease. I will speak about restless leg syndrome, and finally about COVID, which of course fall under the umbrella of infectious disease. So let's start with cancer. Let's see the population-based approach, and here there are many evolutionary models describing cancer growth and its response to treatment in the literature. What I've done is to propose the first population-based model of neuroblastoma, which is a cancer affecting children under vincristine and cyclophosphamide, which are 2 commonly used chemotherapeutic agents against the neuroblastoma. And I calibrate and validate this model on public data to investigate optimal treatment. So to give a brief overview, the model is based on ordinary differential equation that describe tumor growth, but and also drug-induced mortality. Moreover, there is a description of genetic resistance and mutation. Indeed, here on the right, you can see the different genetic population composing the tumor. We assume to have a pre-level of resistance to each drug, so sensitive, mildly resistant, and strong resistance. So we end up with 9 different genetic clones. Moreover, we describe also a mechanism of drug adaptation. Indeed, we take into account the drug concentration using pharmacokinetics, and so the cancer cell can adapt under drug stress and can then revert the behavior. as I said before, we calibrate and validate the model to investigate optimal treatment. And we do this in a direction of personalized treatment. Indeed, we imagine to treat, we imagine to treat different virtual patients, and these patients vary when the treatment starts on their tumor composition. So we imagine that the resistant cancer cell compose certain percentage of the total tumor, the other being sensitive, but we also vary the kind of resistance. So it can be resistant to vincristine, mild or strong resistant, to cyclophosphamide, mild or strong, to both drugs, we can have all kind of clone together. And we can see here each row so represent a different initial tumor composition, and the column represents the dosage in the different cycles along the time. So for example, if we have a tumor that is composed by vincristine, mild or strong resistant and sensitive clone, the optimal treatment should introduce vincristine later, and the different length depends, and when and how should be introduced depend on the liver and what kind of resistance. So let's speak about restless leg syndrome now. This project is done in collaboration with two doctors, which are sector leader in sleep research area, and with a physician from Switzerland. So let me spend a few words on this disease, which is not so common, such as cancer and COVID, not well known. So restless leg syndrome causes an uncomfortable sensation in the legs and a urge to move them. The movement typically relieves the sensation, but when the movement stops, the sensation typically returns. And so the principal disorder are the so-called periodic leg movement. This periodic movement that the subject performs. And it is the global incidence is very high, but is estimated among 5 and 15% because of recently discovered disease. So it's not very precise estimation, but we are speaking about a concrete problem. And the state of the art here, and there are no human models, so we are developing the first in silico model describing the so-called periodic leg movement, and this is done due to a clinical observation because sometimes people move only one leg, and sometimes the two legs move contemporaneously. So the latter case is called bilateral, and the first one is called monolateral. And so the specialists want to test an hypothesis. They have the so-called single generator hypothesis. They want to know if one single neural generator could be responsible of this periodic leg movement, or there is the need to have two different asynchronous generators controlling the right and the left legs. And we answer that yes, it is possible that a single generator could be responsible of this periodic ligament because the in silico sequence that we generate of both healthy and disorder affected subjects were statistically similar to the real periodic leg movement sequence that the doctors record in their sleep laboratory. So to give you an idea of the model, this is a graphical representation. From below you can see the central nervous system, and in the circle represent the neuron controlling the left and the right legs. So we imagine that this neuron receives some inputs from the central nervous system, some specific and some in common. And this represents the physiological activity of the central nervous system. And then we have a periodic leg movement generator representing the pathological activity in common to the two legs to test the single generator hypothesis. Here you can see the various approaches of the calibration, but I don't want to enter too much in the detail. I want only to say that yes, our model were validated by comparing the principal indicator deriving from the real and the in silico leg movement activity at the population level, and we finally supported single generator hypothesis because our model simulated data were similar to the real data. Here in the image you can see an example of PLM sequence generated by the model. So let's speak about the last project presented today, which is COVID. So I think that everyone knows about the disease and also the state of the art. There are many extensions of the well-known SEER model. Indeed, what I do is extending again a model proposed by Gatto and co-authors, so from Dave, to include vaccination on a global scale, dividing the world into high and middle to low income. only 2 nodes for simplicity. And I want to study the pandemic dynamics under intellectual property, which represent the status quo. And I want also to see what could happen by hypothetical vaccination campaigns, so by hypothetical scenario with enhanced global equity and access to vaccine. Here on the right, you can see a graphical representation. We have the world with the virus, which is simply divided in 2 macronodes. And each macronodes is described with an epidemiological model that here you can see the graphical representation of the different class, the resistant, the susceptible, exposed, pre-symptomatic, infected, asymptomatic, then they can be quarantined with the Q, the hospitalized, deaf people, and then you can see the double class with a prime superscript, which represent the same class, but which receive vaccination. So all this graphic representation can be described by a system of ordinary differential equation. Include also contact tracing, as I said before, to quarantine people entering contact with infected previously. Then there is the protection and vaccination, which are governed by the so-called rollout capacity, which represent the fraction of population that can be vaccinated per day. And the rho become the control variable in our hypothetical scenario, because we can vary it to see what is the effect on the pandemic dynamics. And we define the access to vaccine as this, so which represent the viability of vaccine, and the inequity in access with this formula, so which represent if vaccine go more to low income or go more to high income nation. We also include the non-pharmaceutical intervention, and so we model containment measure to restrict the movement of the people, and this is based on the hospital occupancy, because nationally typically use this measure based on hospitality. And this is the initial condition, and we have a very strict final condition. We want to eradicate the virus, so we want to have less than 1 certified infect worldwide. And we calibrate the model on public data, and the validation is done by showing the qualitative agreement between real data and model simulated data in the current scenario. So here you can see the result of the model simulation from the high income country point of view, from the middle to low country point of view, and from the world country point of view for different metrics, such as the number of infected, of registered cases, the number of deaths, the number of vaccination administered, or the average strangeness index, or the containment measure affecting the quality of life and the economics of the place. And here you can see the vaccination pandemic duration. So inside the green area is where we are able to stop the virus. Okay. To stop the virus, and the interesting case is to see the things from the world point of view of things. And here on the x-axis, we have an increase in vaccine viability, and if we go on the top of the epsilon axis, is the case where all vaccines are given to high-income country, and below is the case where all vaccines are given to middle to low country, and the blue dots represent the minimum with a specific access to vaccine. So it's interesting to see that we have very few vaccines. The best strategy is to give the majority of vaccine to the archaic country, because they are the smallest. No? So it's the best strategy is to create a small happy island. But if we have a bit more vaccine, and actually the current situation is inside this range, the optimal strategy should have been to give all vaccine to middle to low income country in order to create a big happy island. And then when we have enough vaccine to make the world happy, of course, the best strategy is to administer them equally in order to create a happy world. And the other interesting thing is that to stop the pandemic, the minimum access that we find of the pandemic is achieved with global equity. So if we want to stop the pandemic using less vaccine possible, we need to adopt a perfect equity strategy. Here you can see a simulation in the status quo, and we select a specific case which we imagine feasible in order to compare the socioeconomic impacts of pursuing such a strategy. And we show that the money saved here on vaccine can cover the the profit of the pharmaceutical company here, so this should justify the start of intellectual property waiver negotiation. So I conclude here. In conclusion, I address six projects related to free cancer of this year. I only present three today. So the first one is genetic disease, cancer, a child-based approach, population-based approach, but also gene regulatory network and a protein-protein interaction network. Then I address the rest-relay leg syndrome disease, the COVID-19. So I think that my important contribution is my engineer modus operandi, how I tackle this problem, and the proposal of a new computational model for the investigated disease, providing new insights, and the solution that I propose as optimal solution based on some control problem. And so I think that I provide some model-informed support to healthcare. So this is the list of my publication, and thank you for your attention.
Okay.